Today I'm joined by Zara Northover. Zara is Olympian 2008, representing Jamaica in the shot put. Welcome,
Correct.
Zara.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Christian.
Zara, how do you get into shot put?
So it's actually a very, very fun, unique little story. So I'll be pretty short. But I was a three-sport athlete in high school. I actually played volleyball, basketball, and softball. At 5'4", I wasn't your tallest basketball player, even though I managed to foul out regularly. I was pretty strong. But track and field was not on the radar. But a friend of mine actually needed a partner in the shot put relay. And they were doing some kind of relay contest, and she was the only shot putter on the team. So she had asked me if I would do it with her. And I was like, what the hell? I love helping people. So I just did it. So it turned out I threw actually, I think 32 feet my first time throwing from just a stand throw, learning on the spot how to do it. And she ended up winning. We won like this dual relay thing with her throw and my throw combined. And I threw like pretty much just far further than any other high school student athlete. I think this was in 11th grade, like ever doing it. So when that happened, the coach was just like, we need you on this team, right? We need you to do the shot put because you can help us get these points. So that actually started my career. It wasn't on the radar throughout high school. It was a friend needed help, and I threw it. And then just kept throwing it. I joined the track team, but mostly did like sprints and like other things because I was like, that could help me in softball because I still played softball that spring season. So I actually was a dual sport athlete in high school, track and field and softball. And then I realized that I was obviously good enough to get a college scholarship. So I knew that was going to be my ticket into college, even though it wasn't the sport I loved the most.
Okay. And 11th grade, what age is that?
That's about 17. So I was about 17 that year. So 17, then 12th grade was 18, and you enter into college.
Okay. Interesting. In your life as an athlete, what was your darkest moment?
So that actually happened. My darkest moment was between 2006 and 2007. Like I had started, this was later, my senior year of college. I ended up getting injured, and it took me a year basically to recover. So I remember redshirting and going into my fifth year at Northeastern University in Boston, Massachusetts. That's where I graduated. But I was starting to throw, and I wasn't hitting the marks, and I just didn't know what to do, right? I went from being one of the top throwers and breaking records to all of a sudden now, like the mark is not going further than 50 feet, right? So in that time, it was tough, but I remember the words of one of the coaches on the team. Her name was Dion Gardner at the time, and she said, Zara, you got to imagine yourself she told me the story of a donkey in a hole, and she was just like, every time the dirt keeps going into this pit, right, the donkey just pats the dirt down, and then eventually he's going to rise out of this dark hole. And so she was just like, right now you focus on the practice. You keep taking throws after throws and strengthening yourself and doing the small things. And by doing the small things, then you're going to get out of it. So I was able to get out of it, come back and break my school record and, and really have a successful senior year. Then going into my first year out of college, right, training for the Olympics, I don't think people are quite prepared for what going into the professional workout circuit looks like, right? Because you're not really a professional until you're Usain Bolt and Asafa sponsored, right? It's you're struggling, you're trying to work, you don't have sponsors, you're trying to pay rent, you still got responsibilities, and you're no longer in school, so you're not even necessarily getting all of that support. So that year of training for the Olympics, you get free help here and there. And unfortunately, I got a free chiropractic, offer to get worked on. And it worked out to be for the worst. During that time, I ended up hurting my back and my L5. It was my L5 S1. I guess the adjustment didn't go right. And They were telling me I was going to need to have surgery. It was like a big, crazy thing. And it's the year of the Olympics. Like, and if I wasn't blessed to have had another friend that said, hey, I know someone that practices active release therapy, ART, he can help you, he said 12 sessions, you don't need to have surgery, just come to me. And, at that point I had no choice but to try. And, my back got better. And then after I got better, then same thing, another person wanted to help, right, with strength and conditioning. And long story short, had me jump off this 5-foot box to do this drill, and out goes the knee. I could not win for the life of me. And same thing, that active release therapist, at this point was such the silver lining, said to me, hey, Zara, I can help with that too. He was able to help, and, I muscled through it. There was a lot of things that was, I just had this vision of myself being in China, but those dark moments were realities of injuries that, you can't control, they happen. So it was tough. It was really, really a tough time, but I never, ever, ever wavered in faith, right? That's where moving in faith as a brand for me came around, because I never wavered in faith. And I just, no matter how many tears, no matter how many down days, I just knew that it was going to be something I was going to overcome, and I was going to make that team. And we had obstacle after obstacle I could go on about, but those injuries that you never prepare for, you just don't happen. But it's because I had such a sound, strong, determined mindset that my body, had to fall in line with the mind.
And do you think you have been in your best shape at the Olympics?
I was not, if I'm being honest, from having the knee injury, I never actually got, I had a couple of options. I could have either had a knee replacement done, which would have, I would have taken 2-3 weeks in order to probably come back, but then I would have to do a knee replacement in 10 years, right? If they would have just taken out the cartilage. So we ended up using what they use for the jumper's knee, and we just literally basically cut the circulation off every time I competed. You put it on top of my knee. So I was a makeshift athlete by the time I got to the Olympics, but it was the dream and the goal to be present, to be in the space. I was a part of when Usain Bolt broke the world record in 2008 the first time. Nothing takes away from that experience to represent my country, and be present, especially in the shot put, a sport that wasn't known to, for Jamaicans having a lot of shot putters. Now we have amazing shot putters, but back then we didn't have that many.
Cool. What was your best moment?
Best moment. So I tell people all the time, walking in the Olympics during the Olympic ceremony, we are at war with each other around the world on an every single day basis for something, right? But here you had hundreds of thousands of athletes around the world with one common goal, and that's just to compete, and we didn't even speak the same language, but people were just lighting up photo, you understood the how to take a picture, and we were taking pictures and laughing and knowing that billions of people around the world, all eyes are on you. Nothing will ever take that moment away. It was definitely an unreal. I light up and I feel the tingles and the shivers every time I even think about it, because it was so surreal.
Yeah. What did you learn from that moment?
From that moment, I realized that my love for people have always been strong, but in that moment, it was even stronger. I've been blessed to compete at the Pan American Games in Brazil. I've competed in Cuba, Guadalajara, Mexico, and in India for the Commonwealth Games. And the one thing that you feel from all of these opening ceremonies is that we're really all one people. The color of our skin might be different, the sound of our voice might be different, how we look, how tall we are, but at the end of the day, the blood that runs within us is all universal. And the desires, especially amongst sports, it's Nelson Mandela said it best. Sports is a universal language, right? Everybody understands how to kick the ball around and throw a shot put when they see it. And that's the one thing that connects us. And it's a beautiful thing why it's very important for sports programs to still consist.
Yeah. And he also said it has the power to change the world.
Absolutely. And it has. It has.
Yeah. Cool. If you could travel back in time, 10, 15, 20 years, what advice would you give a younger Sarah?
Oh, I love this question. So if I could travel back 10 to 15 years, well, let's just say 15 years, because I would be about 20. and getting like in the midst. I would actually have been in that dark time, 20 years old. I would have been like that, junior, sophomore in college. And I would have told myself to be very, very, so if I could travel back and tell 20-year-old Zara 15 years ago a piece of advice, I would tell her to keep being authentically herself, right? Like, I was probably at my most fearless stages. You couldn't tell Zara at 20 years old nothing. Like, I wish she could tell me something today, because whatever it is that she desired, she went after. Whatever it is that she wanted, she accomplished. She was very, very driven. She worked extremely hard, probably too hard sometimes, but it was because of the nature of the circumstance. Like, I didn't have the greatest coach at first, when I came to Northeastern University in Boston, and I did choose the school, not necessarily based off of athletics. I chose it based off of academics. And as a result, I had to work harder. I had to find ways how to teach myself how to throw the shot put and lean on my teammates. Derek Anderson, an actual teammate of mine, really kind of stepped up, and Tortellini, they both stepped up to take me under their wing to coach me. And, I really would have loved on them more, really talked to my head coach sooner about the experience and what I would have needed, potentially would have charged myself to transfer, into the type of program that probably really could have fostered me beyond the level where I was. But I honestly wouldn't tell her to change a thing. I would tell her to keep being fearless and being authentically herself. And so I would just let her know, actually, I would give her confirmation that your future is going to be bright because of the way you are today, because she is the reason why I am who I am today.
Yeah, that's a really powerful message. Do you think you have not been authentic throughout your career?
I was authentic throughout my career. I have always showed up like myself. I wasn't a sponsored athlete. I didn't have much money. There were times where I was literally sleeping in a car or on a friend's couch because that's all I had at the moment. I think another dark moment which caused me to feel inferior, right, was when you're sitting in a state that you weren't raised in. Your Chase bank account is negative $10, and now you don't know what to do. Like, you have to, somebody who is normally independent is now, in a position where they have to reach out and really try to ask for help. And, some of my Jamaican teammates, I remember, is Chelsea Hammond, the girl that years later ended up, being announced silver medalist at the Olympics because, the drug issue that took place. And, but I remember her sending me some cash, so I think that in those moments, I wonder if the authentic Cassidy of me was not present because I didn't want to ask for help. So there's a lot of athletes that don't want to ask for help because of pride or for whatever reason. So you almost pretend that you're okay when you're not. And I think that is something that hurts us, in the long run, because there are a lot of people that want to lend out the hand to support, right? There's a lot of family members, friends, team members that will probably help if they really, really knew what your struggles and needs were. And those are the moments sometimes where I wonder, okay, you know what? I probably should have stood up more for myself and just asked, because the worst that could happen is no. And, people know that I'm a genuine person, so I wouldn't be asking if I didn't need. But, pride will get the best of you sometimes, and you don't. Yeah. But I was blessed. I've had tons of help along my career. And, I think that was actually a defining moment that made me realize, people need to be a part of this journey because we're not on it ourselves, right? Like, when I'm a champion, they're a champion because they're championing for me. So, that is the individual team I've gained on this athletic journey.
Yeah. What are the habits that make you a successful athlete and person?
Persistence and determination are really two words that you hear all the time. And I am no longer, right, a collegiate athlete, Olympic athlete, but now I'm a corporate athlete. That's what I tell people all the time. Like, in the corporate world, in the entrepreneurial world, we're still athletes. The athlete in us doesn't die. And if you're not determined and persistent, if you don't push your body to put it past its limits, if you don't push your mind past the limits, then you're not going to achieve anything, right? Like, I mean, like you will be status quo and you'll get stuff done, but those people that excel on an elite level in whatever area of their lives, at some point either were athletes, I strongly believe, whether it was an athlete on the track or on the fields or just an athlete at mind, right? Because it's all a persistent and determined mindset with a whole lot of faith. So faith for me, some people take it religiously. I am religious, I believe in God. But for people that don't, I always tell them we all have faith in something, right? Like, like whether it's your grandmother, your dog, or Jesus or Buddha, whatever. But faith is, being certain of the uncertain. And we are always uncertain of what's going to happen next, but you got to be certain that it's going to be positive. So when you have that positive mindset, when you're persistent and you're determined, that is what levels you out for success.
Yeah. And the question I like to ask is, yes, it's understandable that you should have faith, but for everyone, there will be phases in life where faith dissipates a little bit, right? Things don't go your way and, it's hard to see the light ahead. How do you make sure you keep the faith? So
faith, there's such thing called an unwavering faith, right? And at the end of the day, even those individuals that lose faith, I don't think they entirely lose faith, right? Like your flame will get blown away and you'll start to see smoke. But what normally happens if there's like a slow breath, right? Like a slow breath that literally goes on that leaf that's like the fire and the flame is starting to crumble, right? What ends up happening is the fire starts to pick up slowly again and it starts to get bigger again. And I mean, unfortunately, that's how like forest fires actually keep going. And typically it's because somebody thought they put out the flame, but it was never really put out. And that's how I like to think of faith. Right? We may think that we don't have it, but it's still there. It just needs to be triggered or nurtured, right? Or reminded, right, by someone else. And that's why it is very important for you to have a strong system, like allow people in your life to continue to influence, right, you and continue to be there for you, whether you want to hear it or not. Because ultimately, the mind does want to go down a dark path once it's already down that train. But who wants to live in darkness for the rest of their life, right? If you have one match in a dark room, it's going to be light, right? Like you're going to see some sort of light. You're going to see that speckle. And that's what faith is. And it's okay to embrace the darkness for a moment and to be sad, but you just have to push yourself past that dark moment and know that, okay, it's okay for me, for my coach to help me out of this. It's okay for my teammates to help me out of this. It's okay for me to read that article, about Nelson Mandela being in prison for years, right? Like for decades. And this man still came out and just, did amazing things for the world. And what makes him any different than you or me or anyone, so I think it's okay to allow yourself to be upset in a moment. But just remember, if someone else can, then you can too. And someone always has a worse situation than you do.
Yeah, really cool. Do you have a morning routine?
The first thing that I do in the morning is definitely pray, because I'm so grateful to have life when I wake up and another breath, because clearly, as we're seeing in the midst of this pandemic, that, it's not just the pandemic, but it's every day, right? Every day somebody could lose their life. And then, after I pray, I'm not the best at this now that I'm not an athlete anymore, but I really try to force myself to exercise. I to force myself to get exercise in the morning, but I'm beating myself up to get more on routine. But typically it's I pray and then I, shower and then I get myself, half the time I don't eat breakfast until I'm in the work and until I'm at like on my way to work or at the office. But that's typically the first: pray, shower, and get ready to go and do something next if I don't get my workout in beforehand.
How do you prepare for important moments?
The same way, so this might make you laugh, right? Like I prepare for important moments the same way I actually did when I was competing in college and at the Olympics. I look in the mirror, and it was my coach, Joe Donahue, who passed away before the 2012 Olympics. He said, Zara, every time you compete, every time you practice, I need you to look in the mirror and tell yourself, I'm great and I'm going to do great things. So, funny story, there was a job that I really, really wanted. I applied 77 times to this company. And when I finally got an interview, I remember getting in front of the mirror, and I was like, okay, like, you got this, like, pumping myself up like I'm an athlete again in my business suit. And then I said, Zara, I am great, and I am going to do great things. And before any important moment, that is one thing that I still do to this day. And I still call my mother, I called her every single track meet, called her before every single major moment. I still call her and we pray together. So those are the two things that I do before every and any important moment of my life.
How do you overcome setbacks?
How do I overcome setbacks? So I've come to realize actually now, being 36 years old and really looking back on my life, setbacks only set me up for comebacks. They were really lessons in my life that I was able to learn from, because there was either something that I could have done differently, or there was a lesson in the midst of whatever took place that happened. So I actually don't look at necessarily setbacks as like failures or, downfalls. I look at them as lessons and opportunities. But if I was to give an example as to what that I do when it happens, I always tell people now that it's like I live my life with this baseball bat in my hand. And I know that every time that a pitch comes my way, that it potentially could be a ball, it potentially could be a strike, right? Or it potentially could be like, you're right, I'm not going to hit it at all, right? And but no matter what, I have to be in my power stance. I have to be ready to swing and hit, because if I don't swing at all, then I'm never going to be able to hit anything. So that's how I prepare for setbacks. I prepare for whatever comes my way. I prepare to be in my power stance, right? Being as healthy as I possibly could be, being sharp mentally as possibly I could be, and ready to strategize no matter what comes my way. So whether if it's a great contact, it's going to be a strike, a home run over the, right? It's going to be a home run over the fence. If it is that, like, right, the ball wasn't the one, the pitch wasn't the one, then it's going to be a strike, right? I'm not going to hit it. If it's a ball, then not every opportunity is your opportunity, the right opportunity for you. So sometimes you might look and then you say, no, not swinging at that one, right? And it turns out to be the best thing, because, right, potentially if you get all balls, you're going to make it to first base, right? If you strike out, then you're going back to the pit. But if you go back to the pit, you're going back to the pit mentally preparing for the next thing, right? So that's kind of how I observe life and setbacks and obstacles and successes.
You have some really cool analogies. I definitely I will certainly remember this one and the one with the donkey in the hole. Who's your role model and why?
Oh, so I have so many, but I would say, and it's, this is really a tough question. So I'm gonna give you I am going to give you just three quick, options, because they're all different. So my first role model, first and foremost, is Jesus, right? Not even necessarily God. And the reason why I always tell people Jesus is because there's certain things that I see, that we learn in the Bible talking about, like, right, Jesus got hit and, right, he just gave them the other cheek. And I really think about that when I think of how life really throws, right, setbacks and obstacles our way, and we could either continue to be upset and have that derail us, or we could just turn the other cheek, and so all the way I live my life, I really try to live my life striving to be more like Jesus every single day, wholeheartedly, because I know that if I stay the course, then great things are going to come to pass, and I'm going to impact people along the way. So I would say that first and foremost, that's my first role model. But real life, my father, he passed away April 28th of 2012, so the year of the 2012 Olympics. And this man is 4'11", so very tiny guy, short guy, and but major personality, And one of the quotes that he impressed in us on a regular basis, he would say, Zara, a man is not a failure because he tried and failed, but because he failed to try, right? Like, right in his Jamaican accent. And he was just so persistent. And I know that that's where I get it from, like all his stories and a lot of these, analogies also come from him. because he was just very driven, and he was very successful in his life, and may he rest his soul. And he's with me every single day. And last, I just can't leave my mom out, right? Like, because she's my guardian angel. She's still here with me today. And, she's just always reminding me to never forget where I've come from. And that keeps me grounded, like to be humble in what we do. And no question is a dumb question when others come to us, because her coming up here to America as a Jamaican citizen, she didn't know a lot. She didn't have a lot, and, still struggles with a lot of things. And, like, because of her and her reminding me to simplify is why I've been able to be very successful in sales, to be very successful and rise within my own company and impact people, because all she says is, make sure you treat them like you're treating me, right? Like, so I'm able to really break things down for people to understand and feel comfortable. And that is a true success when it comes to any corporate or an entrepreneurial job. So those three would be my top role models.
Cool. And in previous interviews, a few people have mentioned the name Usain Bolt as their role model. So we've all seen him competing. We've seen the awesome things. We've seen the personality. You have met him, right? You have been in the Olympic team
I know
with him.
Well. That's in his documentary, yeah.
How would you describe him?
Usain is a ray of light. He's a ball of fun. And, I don't necessarily, he was my peer, right? He was a friend. He still is a friend. He's not past tense. He's still here, and he reminds me of the epitome of truly being authentic in spirit. Usain didn't allow the way of the world, the fame, or anything to change him, right? He was still friends with his friends, no matter what level, right, they were or they weren't. He still made sure that he gave back to his country on a regular basis and shared what he had. And his principles are just very sound. And that's what makes him, for me, right, that ray of light that I express that he is. Because I'm very proud to be able to call him a friend, proud to know him. But I'm even more prouder not because of his accomplishments. I'm prouder because of the human that he is and who he is to people.
Yeah, cool. What is the best advice you received and who gave it to you?
So the best advice that I have received and the best advice I have given. So the best advice that I have received, one of the best advice that I've ever received, I would say, came from my coach, Mohammed Satara. He's now a Division I shot put coach at UCal Berkeley. And when my father, the year of 2012, when I was training for the games, my former coach had passed away from cancer in October of 2011. My brother was shot and killed in Jamaica in January of 2012. And then my father died of heart failure in April of 2012. It was a lot, like mentally, because they were prominent individuals in my life. And I remember one day, though, sitting on the floor by the circle, just crying at the University of Michigan. And, my coach came and sat next to me, and he put his arm around me, and he said, "Zara, you are at a pivotal point in your life." And he was just like, you could stop right now and no one would blame you. No one would fault you. Everyone would understand, right? Or you could choose. You could choose to overcome this very obstacle, this setback, these downfalls, right? These mishaps. And you could push forward, right? But if you decide to push forward, then you have to give it your all. And I think of that every single time that something happens, someone passes, because it put me in that moment where, right, I am living to lead others' legacy, to continue on someone else's dream as well as mine. So I won't allow death or things, especially outside of my control, to deter my movements. And I feel like that piece of advice, especially on that day, because he was so right, no one would be upset. Everyone would understand if I allowed that to be the end of my career, or the end of just training for 2012. But I made the options to push forward, and I pushed forward as hard as I could. And, I still fell short not making the team physically. But I actually was a part of the team because I ended up being the journalist. I did an internship for teamjamaica.com. And at Team Jamaica for Instagram, and I wrote beautiful articles on Navleen Williams, right, the 400 gold medalist. I wrote articles on Siobhan Stoddard. I wrote articles on couple, Jason Morgan and I think the medalist actually in the hurdles, right? Like I did a lot of great work. So even though I wasn't in London, right, my work were speaking for these student athletes, and a lot of them even gave me great feedback saying that was the first time I had an article that felt like it was me, because I remember being an athlete thinking that sometimes I don't feel like my voice is actually being portrayed when you do interviews and articles, because people slice and dice and make it whatever it is. But so I made sure I wanted to be true to that when I was representing these athletes. And I remember seeing Moving in Faith, right? Like what I'm wearing now, my brand, people were wearing Moving in Faith shirts and hoodies, and I still send Moving in Faith bracelets to the teams that they all wore, and some still wear it today. So even though I wasn't in London, I was, and I believe that it was really because my coach, Mohammed Satara, had said to me, right, you could allow this to deter you, or you could allow it to propel you, and I allowed it to propel me.
Yeah, really cool. A question.
Yes.
In some sports, let's think about, you would have to give advice to younger female athletes. Some sports always have this idea of there might be a challenge with body image, right? So your sport is one of them. So you have to develop your body in a certain way to bring the best performance out, but that development and the way it looks is not necessarily aligned with what is commonly known.
Standard. Yeah.
Yes. What would be your advice to younger athletes?
Body images, I mean, it's even it's something that women on a whole, regardless of athletics or not, right, we all struggle with. And even to this day, it's still something that I struggle with, right? Being happy with the size that you are, the way that you look. And but I would always say, as I still do now, right, I am alive and I have the ability to transform, right? Like as a woman, right, when you bear a child, your body literally transforms in front of you. And men can't do that, right? I mean, now they can, but like now there's all sorts of technology that can allow that to happen. But really, we were blessed as women. We were blessed with that gift to be able to transform it to whatever it is that we desire. So life is always about choices. And if your choice in this moment and in this phase of your life is to be an amazing shot putter, right, then the work that you're doing, regardless of what your body looks like at that moment, right, is for the choice to be a shot putter. When you're no longer a shot putter and you decide that you want to lose 50 pounds, you could go ahead and do that, right? Like, like it's going to take hard work. It's going to take determination. It's going to take effort, regardless of which angle you go. But it's still a choice and a decision that you are enabled to have as a woman. And that is the most powerful thing that you can have, is that choice to transform and to make a change. So for women that are on the verge of like, I don't know if I want to do this, because I was that girl in high school. I didn't want to do the shot put because I'd be like, you know what they look like? Like, they're just bigger. They're not like, I mean, they don't have the Coca-Cola bodies, like, and I would always think to myself, like, but there's so much power and strength and grace in what they do that, like, you don't know it until you just decide to make the choice and commit, right, to the action of what it is that was. And I knew I wanted to be a star athlete. I knew I wanted to not have to have my Jamaican mother pay for college. And that shot put was my ticket, right, around the world, and my ticket for a free education. And that in itself was worth, right, the 30, 40 extra pounds that I gained of muscle, right? Like, I mean, some women don't want to walk around saying I have a 525 deadlift and a 475 pound squat, right? That does intimidate some men, but the reality is, like, that was my decision to do as an athlete to make it to the elite level.
Yeah, I definitely like the point of it's a choice. It's really cool.
It's a choice.
Yeah. Back in the days, how did a typical training day look like?
Oh man, I actually want to talk about the just after college day, because like I said, I do think that there is this this stigma that's not talked about often about the true hardcore rigid work it actually takes to be an elite level athlete. And when you're not sponsored, it's a completely different route than when you're being paid 70, 80, even $50,000 to do what you love to do, right? So when I graduated from Northeastern University in 2007, I ended up taking on a volunteer track coach position at Northeastern, right? So therefore, I would have the opportunity to be able to use the facilities, right? So I volunteered my time in order to be able to train. I also, took on a paid position where I worked at the university as well, but it was a full-time position. So I had to have work 8 to 5. Right. So I'm not only just training all day, but I have work 8 to 5. So for me at that time, I would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I would have training sessions at whether it was 5:30 or 6 p.m. with Dan Boothby. That was my strength and conditioning coach at the time. And, so I would train before work and then I would shower. I would go to work at 8 o'clock. And then maybe at lunch that I would take that time to change it, to stretch and to make sure I'm working on my muscles, right? Like to prepare because, like you're sitting down all day or you're walking around all day for work. And then at right after 5, then I would head to practice, right? And then like when I'm heading to practice now from 5, let's just say like 5:30, 6 o'clock, I'm ready to go from 6 to sometimes 9 o'clock at night. You know what I mean? Like I'm in there throwing and going through drills and dealing with rehab and dealing with everything, and then to potentially get home at 10 o'clock at night, right? Like that is a day of a working professional athlete, a working amateur athlete on the rise, like, and that's a true replica of a day. Like, and that's something that we don't necessarily talk about in the Olympic world a lot. And like, like that, like you have to work around an actual work schedule and, you have to find ways to get places to train because that is always the struggle for athletes that aren't supported.
Yeah. What's going on in the life of Zara at this moment in time? In the pre-interview chat, you told me a little bit about the project you're running, which is really cool. Tell us more about that.
All right. So Zara 2020, during the great pause, I call it, right? So we are in the midst of the great pause where people are staying home and staying safe. And right now, I just got promoted within my own company to a project manager. So definitely excited about that journey that I'm embarking on. However, the passion project right now is in the midst of this pandemic, COVID-19. I unfortunately did lose my brother April 6th, Wayne Wong, to COVID-19, and nothing will ever replace, like losing a family member, a friend, or anyone to this ridiculous, crazy disease. And because of this disease, it's caused a lot of us to have to remain indoors, right? Like, around the world for precautionary measures to flatten the curve. And one of the things that I know, I may have lost a brother, but I know so many student athletes out there, which student athletes are my heart. And I think of the fact that so many seniors have lost their collegiate senior year, the senior year that maybe they were looking to show up, show out, and break records and make nationals and championships. Right, so many juniors and people that were coming off of an injury that were excited to go into their season, lost that. And just because it's not a person, like a death, it's still a very big impact to you. And mentally, that could throw a lot of people off. And this is not like anything we've ever seen ever before. Nothing has ever caused sports to cancel, and sports is canceled. And what I want to make sure, this project that we're doing, I'm doing this with Field to the Real as the name of the organization. We want to make sure that we create a show on a platform where we're talking, we're providing resources for student athletes. We're talking to student athletes and allowing college student athletes around the world, regardless of what sport you're in, to speak about your feelings, right? What you're feeling in this time, what some things that you're doing, so they could be sharing tips and tactics and things, because in the midst of this madness, it's also an opportunity now where I'm seeing more people communicate, where people are taking more time to connect. And that is a beautiful thing, right? So if you want to look for a silver lining, the silver lining is this pandemic is actually causing us to work together more, to communicate virtually more. And that is becoming viral, right? So that's what we want to do. This platform as Field to the Real is going to bring student athletes around the world, collegiate student athletes, where we're going to be talking about tips. We're going to be bringing former student athletes to talk about what would I do, right? Because now that's advice that they could take. If I was in this situation, if I could imagine myself in college, what would I be thinking? How would I be handling the situation? Because maybe that's going to be the thing that helps them. Because the thing that I don't want to see, right, is depression take over and anxiety take over, because even though this is detrimental, it's not the end of the world, right? If you still have breath, you still have an opportunity, and we want to make sure that student athletes know that they're not alone, that there's other former student athletes in this family around the world that care about them. That's universal, and we want to make sure that we see them through to be successful in whatever the new normal is going to be, right? Because it is going to be a new normal, you know, when this is all said and done, but we are going to get through it champions on the other side.
Really cool. And can you repeat again, where can people find that project?
So Field to the Real, at Field to the Real is on Instagram, and that's FIELDTOTHEREAL, Field to the Real. So you could always check on you could DM me at Zara Northover, and, you know, to get more information, fieldtothereal.com. But we will, you know, be putting out content, and probably starting in the next 2 weeks, where individuals will be coming on and talking. And if you want to be a part of it, I mean, this really is a platform for you, right? For all athletes and student athletes, former, past, and present, because we want to bring people together to start having more conversations. And, you know, hopefully this is the thing that will provide those senior student athletes jobs, right, that are looking for internships and opportunities now, because companies or people are going to be aware, and now they could, you know, they're going to hear these student athletes and provide for them. So we're hoping that this grows and becomes a platform that connects student athletes around the world. So fieldtothereal.com and Field to the Real on Instagram.
Okay, cool. I will link that up as well.
All right, thank you.
Do you want to nominate someone to be interviewed?
Oh, of course. I think that, I have a laundry list of people. Have you interviewed Chelsea? So Chelsea Hammond, I mentioned her in my interview. She's the one I said that sent me money when I had none. But she actually was the Jamaican long jumper from 2008 that really won because somebody had tested positive. I mean, that came in second. No, she came in third. Whatever it was, there was somebody, either one or two people tested positive before her. So she had come in fourth at the Olympics, but she really, I think she did medal. So they just gave her, I think, that medal like 2 years ago. Like, one, I don't understand how you test positive, like how it takes that long for them to figure out you're on drugs, but whatever it may be. But I think that it might be cool because, you know, obviously that changed her whole life trajectory. If she would have won a medal that year, sponsorships would have been different. Everything would have been different. Her life would have been, you know, different. So I think it would be cool to hear, hear her story, because I also don't know how many people have interviewed her, how many people have sponsored. I mean, she lost all of that when she didn't get that medal that she deserved and that she really did get.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Where can people find you? You mentioned Instagram. Any other places where people can get hold of you?
Yep, I have a website too, ZaraNorthover.com, but Instagram, I'm checking my DMs. You can follow me on there at Zara Northover. I do have another Instagram at Moving in Faith, because that is a global empowerment brand that I do have, and I wear with pride. And that's where you'll find me most. I mean, if you type in Zara Northover, all my stuff probably is going to come up on Google. I always tell people, you have more information on me than I do about you.
Sarah, that was really cool. Thanks for sharing your powerful messages. Thanks for your time.